I'm James Scott. I'm a professor in the School of Public Health at the University of Toronto, and I have a unique problem that Solutionbee was able to help me with. I run a microbial culture collection, and in order to store the organisms in our microbial culture collection, we store little bits of organisms in small tubes that we load into boxes, and we store those boxes in these large flasks. We put nitrogen, liquid nitrogen, in the bottom of the flask so that it keeps the aliquots of microorganisms cold. And this is how we store and preserve these microorganisms. Now, in order to preserve the microorganisms, we actually can't fill the entire tank full of liquid nitrogen, because occasionally liquid nitrogen leaks into small tubes, and then when you remove the tube, it bursts. So increasingly what folks who store microorganisms and other materials like them do is that rather than fill the entire flask full of nitrogen, they actually will maintain only a small amount of nitrogen on the bottom in liquid form. And then the nitrogen vapor keeps everything cool, and it doesn't cause the problem of exploding tubes. Now, while it's safer in general for handling and preserving microorganisms that way, it sets up another problem. And that other problem is making sure that there's always enough liquid nitrogen in the bottom of the tank to be able to keep everything cold. It's a lot easier when the tank is full, because you might have a month, maybe 6 weeks before it takes the nitrogen to evaporate. But if it's only a small amount of nitrogen in the bottom of the tank, then you need to monitor those levels very closely. And typically the way that people monitor those levels is using one of these dark colored yardsticks. So to do that monitoring, you take the lid off the tank, you dip the yardstick into the tank, and then pull the yardstick out of the tank. And then you can read the frozen mark on the yardstick, and we can see here that there's about 7 inches of liquid nitrogen in the bottom of the tank. Now, we never want the level of liquid nitrogen to go below about 4 inches, and we never really want it to be higher than about 8 inches of liquid nitrogen. So you can imagine that with the loss of liquid nitrogen from this tank at around 1/4 of an inch a day, maybe 1/3 of an inch a day, depending on the usage conditions and that sort of thing, it becomes really difficult to maintain that level in that sweet spot between, say, 4 inches and 8 inches of nitrogen. And because we have 3 of these big tanks, we really wanted to find an easier solution than every day coming in with the ruler and writing this down and tracking it. And so that brings me to Solutionbee. So Solutionbee has a device that's used for measuring the static weight of the hives of bees. And we thought that applying that same technology to measuring the amount of liquid nitrogen in the tank may actually be very helpful. So what we did was we situated the tank on top of a scale that in real time measures the amount of material in the tank, the total mass of the tank. And then over time, we can just track that loss of nitrogen and look at when we need to replenish the tank. So we've been now, I think, 3 or 4 months into our testing of the device on all of our 3 tanks, and we've got beautiful linearity of the data showing the very precise loss rate of liquid nitrogen over those times. And even more importantly, we're able to set up alarms that warn us when the level of nitrogen drops below a certain amount in the tank. Now, the B scales obviously were designed first and foremost to measure mass. How much does the hive on top of the scale weigh? In our case, we're not so much interested in mass, but we're interested in the number of inches of nitrogen in the bottom of the tank. So we were able to work with Solutionbee to implement a formula to be able to convert those mass amounts in the tanks to linear measures of nitrogen in the bottom of the tank. And since we've been able to do that, it makes it very familiar for our lab folks. They can They can look at our portal and read how many inches of nitrogen are in the bottom of our tanks at any time. So it's really a fantastic solution to a problem that was very difficult for us to make sure that we could maintain these conditions and protect the integrity of our strains. So thank you to Solutionbee for solving something that's kept many of us in the lab up at night worrying about making sure that our microbes are safe.